Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll give it just a couple minutes for everyone to join. Happy July 31st. I know August starts tomorrow. I am still reeling a little bit. I don't know about anybody else, but this summer has flown by. But normally I ask people to drop in the chat where they're coming in from or where they're viewing from, but I'm actually really interested in what people have going on for fall fundraising event season, either events or campaigns anyone has going on. So if there's anything exciting anybody has planned, if you want to drop that in the chat, I would love to learn more about that. I know there's a ton of fun stuff coming up with organizations that I'm familiar with, but it's always fun to share. Thank you. Our numbers are slowing down a little bit, so we'll just go ahead and kick things off because I know Missy has a lot to share with us today, and I don't want to take up too much of her time with all of my yapping. So welcome everyone today. My name is Danny Clough. I am the channel marketing coordinator over on the QGive team. Today I am joined by some wonderful people. I've got Brendan Smith from QGive's business development team, Angel Theodore from Gale, as well as our speaker, Missy Gale, who's going to be sharing those key takeaways from the 2024 Giving USA report. Today's webinar is eligible for 1 credit of CFRE continuing education. So all of you who are keeping track of those credentials, make sure you're taking advantage of that. Here we go. We are recording today's webinar. So every registrant will be receiving an email tomorrow afternoon with a link to the recording of the webinar and the slides, as well as a few additional free resources to help you on your fundraising journey. As we go through the webinar today, please feel free to use the chat area to talk with all of us on the call today, as well as your peers who are here. And then if you have any questions, you can drop those into that Q&A area in Zoom, and we'll answer those at the end of today's webinar. And then as some of you may have noticed, something did go on earlier this year. QGive joined. My apologies, everyone, the motion censored lights. Okay. Maybe we're just going to be in the dark for a minute. Apologies, everyone. Earlier this year, QGive did join the Bloomerang team to offer a modern giving platform that puts relationships at the heart of fundraising. The combined solution unifies donor activities, giving you the power to acquire new donors, cultivate impactful relationships, and maximize the potential of your donor communities. We're super excited for all of the opportunities this can bring for you and your organizations. And of course, our wonderful partner network, one of those partners being Gale. QGive is proud to have a whole partner network full of wonderful organizations who want to help you on your fundraising journey. Of course, we have Gale, who is their team over there has helped nonprofit organizations across the country develop campaign strategies, implement major giving and relationship-driven fundraising programs, and elevate the fundraising prowess of staff, CEOs, and board members. They've got an incredibly passionate team who is ready to help you on your journey. So we'll be sharing their contact information at the end of today's presentation. Please feel free to jot that down and reach out if you think they could be a great fit for your organization. And of course, our wonderful speaker who's here today, Missy Gale. You'll have to excuse me as I look at my notes to look at her bio, which is so extensive, which clearly means we have the right person talking to you all today. Here we go. Missy is the founder and president of Gale and has 3 decades of experience in fundraising and public relations for various nonprofit sectors, including hospitals, museums, educational institutions, community service organizations. She's a CFR or a certified fundraising executive, has served as national chair of the Association of Philanthropic Counsel, and has a board member of the Association of Fundraising Professionals Fort Worth chapter. And Missy currently serves on the boards of AFP Foundation for Philanthropy and Giving USA Foundation. An incredible background in this industry, so I'm so glad we have you with us today, Missy. I'm not going to take up any more of your time, so with that, I'll turn things over.
Thank you so much, and welcome everybody. Thank you, Danny and Brendan, for inviting Gale, me, to share with you the exciting results of the Giving USA report on philanthropy for the year of 2023. We've got a lot of exciting things to share today, so I'm going to jump right in just a few seconds. But as I listen to Danny talk about relationships and relational fundraising, you're going to see in the results today that our work as fundraisers is rooted in relationships, and the kind of kind of giving that has happened in the United States follows all the great work all of you are doing. You'll move to the next slide. Giving USA supporters here, you see them lined up. There are loads of technology firms and service firms behind funding the Giving USA report every year, and we thank them all. Next slide. So what is Giving USA? We're going to go over that in just a few minutes. Today, we're going to be looking at the 2023 contributions by source and by recipient type. Then we're going to look at the rate of change for giving over the last 2 years. It's always great to compare and contrast this year to last year. We'll look at trends in total giving, economic trends in giving by source, and trends in giving by recipient type. Giving USA, I think you all know, has been running this report for now, I think, over 60 years. And so it's exciting to give the results of that report today. 2023 contributions overall, 557.16 billion, which is pretty exciting. You can see individuals gave 67%. Foundations followed that with 19%. 8% in bequests, and 7% in corporations. And we'll compare and contrast that in just a few minutes. Next slide. Here we are. Giving USA is the longest running annual report in U.S. charitable giving. It began in 1956 by the American Association of Fundraising Council, now the Giving Institute, and it's made possible by the Giving Institute member firms that we shared a few minutes ago. The work is researched and written by the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, and then also reviewed by the Giving USA committee. Next slide. So let's look at our contributions by source of the type of, by the type of recipient organization. Religion, again, 24% is our highest at 145.81 billion. And then you're going to see in here human services and education. Human services is actually a little bit higher than education at 14%. This is trending really since 2020, 2021. 13% giving to grant-making foundations, 10% public society benefit, 9% health, 5% international affairs, 4% arts, culture, and humanities, and 3% environment and animals, and also 3% to individuals. So what's happened over the last 2 years when we look at 2021 and 2022 to 2022, 2023? And we're also going to look at this in just a moment, adjusted for inflation. Individual giving actually increased by 1.6% over last year's, which was at a negative 5.6%. Foundations increased by 1.7%, bequests by 4.8%, and corporations by 3%. Next slide. But now let's look at this adjusted for inflation. And when we do this, because we are in inflationary time right now, we see some things decrease. For our overall total giving, if adjusted for inflation, is down by 2.1%. Individual giving is down by 2.4%, foundations by 2.3%, bequest is actually up by 0.6%, and corporations is down by 1.1% of overall giving. Okay. And now we're looking at the recipients in current dollars. You can see in religion that while it is still the strongest allocation in the areas of type of recipient of giving, it does continue to decrease this year at 3.1%. Education also decreased to 11.1%. Human services, a little bit, down to 5.8%. Foundations, we saw a big increase in giving at 15.4%. We'll talk about that later in today's presentation. In the healthcare area, we saw a nice increase up to 8.7%. Public society benefit really increasing now at 11.6%. Arts, culture, and humanities, 11%. International affairs came back to 2.5%. And environment and animals is sitting right about the same at 8.2%. We always look at these then adjusted for inflation, especially in these times. And this is where we see more volatility, right? In the area of religion, if you really adjust for inflation, we're down by 1%. In education, we're seeing an increase by 6.7%. Human services increased to 1.7%. Foundations, 10.8%. Health at 4.4%. Public society benefit at 7.2%. Arts, culture, and humanities at 6.6%. International affairs at a negative 1.6%, and environment and animals at 3.9%. Next slide. So now let's take a look at giving over time. And this is where we see some excitement, I think, in the fact that generosity, it really has remained and continues to increase in the United States, even though sometimes we have times that go up and down. We go all the way back to 1983, and you come up, you saw that big surge in 2021, right after the pandemic or during the pandemic, and now we've adjusted up again to 557.16 billion. Pretty exciting. Giving by individuals over this time period as well. And again, this shows the adjustments for inflation, showing this generosity through individuals over time from 1983, going all the way up in current dollars. And then you can see the volatility as we've had inflationary years over time. Giving by foundations, and we're going to hit on this again in the takeaways in just a little while. If you look at the inflation adjusted dollars, we see that foundations had a nice surge upward, and in current dollars, it trails just a little bit. Giving by bequests. This year and really last year and this year, we're starting to see this uptick in bequests as the baby boomers begin to think about their planned giving, et cetera. And we can see that adjustment over time. We had a big surge, it looks like in the 2018, 2019 timeframe, and then we've adjusted out a little bit this year. Giving by corporations. Again, over this span of time, we're at 11.23% adjusted for inflation in 1983, and at 36.55, sorry, in current dollars in 2023. Total giving by source in 5-year spans. I love to look at this, and I know we've talked about this in previous webinars that we've done. We've got our individual giving and foundation giving. Foundations also driven by individuals. Really, I mean, that nice big bar continues in individual giving. And in foundation giving, we're seeing that increasing from 2014 to 2018, and then you see it really jumping up in 2019 to 2023. Also seeing that nice rise in bequests, and then corporations are remaining somewhat flat. Percentage of giving in total in 5-year spans from 1984 to 2023. Again, this is our percentages now. We know that individual giving is declining over time. We're going to talk about that as we talk about key takeaways, but you look back to 1984 and 1988, 80% of overall giving was from individuals, and today it's 69%. And really over the last 2 5-year spans, we've continued to see declines in individual giving, which is puzzling and it's concerning for many. I would like to address that in our key takeaways once we're through this data. We are seeing, though, an increase in giving from foundations. If we look at 7% back in 1983 to 1988, coming up in 1999 and 2003 to 11%, then jumping up in 2009 to 14%, and in the last 2 5-year spans, 15%, and now up to 17%. Nice and strong in the foundation area. Bequests also increasing, well, 7, 8, 9%, and they're 8, 9%, 8% again, right? So we did see increase in bequests over the last couple of years, but overall it's remained fairly steady, and the same with corporate giving. Next slide. So our trends in total giving. We looked at just the 2-year span a little earlier. Now we're looking at that trend from 1983 all the way up to 2003. Little bit of a decline, and when you look at adjusted for inflation, but overall that trending has gone up over the 40-year period of time. So giving as a percent of gross domestic product, this is a number that all of us in fundraising would like to see go up. It is 2% of the gross domestic product, which is very strong. We believe with continued work in this area and moving individuals back to giving and giving more, that this could become a larger percentage. But if you go back over a 40-year span of time, we hit 2.1% back in the early 2000s. We dropped a little bit, and right now we're at 2%. The stock market has always been, Standard & Poor's 500 index has always been an indication of people's inclination to give, especially corporations and individuals feeling stronger as a result of the S&P index. That's no different. From 1983, you can see areas where we've had high S&P and areas where we've had lower, and we've watched giving track right alongside that. So total giving, inflation adjusted dollars. And then if we go to that disposable personal income, again, when the household income is strong and after-tax dollars are strong, people have more inclination to make philanthropic contributions. So if we follow again with the economy, we see that, really going back 40 years, it hasn't changed a whole lot. When we have areas of decline, we tend to decline in our overall giving, and areas where the economic outlook is strong and personal disposable income is strong, then we see individuals more likely to give. Corporations is really interesting to me. When you look at the pre-tax profits of corporations, we actually saw corporations giving a lot more by percentage of their pre-tax profits back in the 1980s than we're seeing today, at 0.08% in 2018 and 1% of pre-tax profits in 2023. Those that study corporate giving could probably analyze this a lot better than I. However, we're seeing a change in the way corporations give, and we're also seeing a little bit of pull back around volunteerism as a whole. When more people are involved in volunteering, more people, corporations tend to give more. Giving to religion. This is a subject that many have asked about over the years. Why are we seeing an overall decline in giving to religion, while it still is the highest percentage of area of any type of giving? As Millennial and Gen Z donors indicate, they'll give more to faith-based organizations than houses of worship. There are concerns around will the houses of worship receive giving directly? One of the things that came out of this report in discussion and key findings is to consider inviting contributions based on its ministries, engage congregations to engage with the community more which then would closely tie them more to the house of worship. Again, with less people going to houses of worship, more intentional effort must be made here in order to see these numbers turn around. Giving to education. Again, a strong year overall for education, especially at the university level. In the analysis here, universities have been, and education as a whole has been really tied with a push towards its DEI initiatives, and fundraising priorities must be aligned around those in order for education to see that alignment of fundraising come along with it. Engaging alumni in these conversations around the top issues in education will be really key to fundraising in this next year. Giving to human services from 1983 to 2003. So you can see human services really surged after 2020 and has continued to do well, which is exciting, I think, to see, considering there are so many human services nonprofits across the United States. We're going to look and discuss a little bit later some of the key findings around this, but short-term success can be captured with long-term strategic goals and messaging for human services organizations. And they saw that when they really intentionally put that forward during COVID, using technology and advancing their work in different ways. Giving to foundations has been somewhat volatile over the years. If you look back at 1983 at 8.29 adjusted for inflation, that huge surge again in between around 2020, 2021, and a little bit of a drop off and then back up again in 2023. Public society benefit has also enjoyed a surge of interest over the last couple of years, or actually over the last 10 years, if you look back, with this 45.49 billion adjusted for inflation, spiking up like everything did in 2021, and then still enjoying 62.81 billion for public society benefit. Again, a country very involved and interested in the benefit of those in our overall society. Our more traditional giving areas like health, while they're doing well, aren't increasing quite at the rate of some others. So when you look at way back at 1983 at 10.59 billion adjusted for inflation, we've seen an increase in giving toward healthcare and a broader increase in giving toward healthcare since the pandemic. But overall, those trends haven't gone up quite as sharply as some other areas like public society benefit. Arts, culture, and humanities from 1983 and 2003. When you look at, back in 2003 at 18.4 billion, we're now up to 25.26 billion. We had some decline there from 2008 to 2013, along with economic downturn, but they're continuing to do strong, to have strong results and receive a good amount of philanthropic giving. International affairs really spiked, as you can see, in 2021, and it's come back down or pulled away a little bit since the pandemic. But we had this 29.26 in 2018, and we're right back there again in 2023. And then finally, giving to environment and animals. This was exciting. While this area generally doesn't see as large a dollar amount as other areas of giving, environment and animals did better in this past year and has since 2018, as you can see. Okay, and this is a bar chart sharing in percentages those areas that we've just discussed. Again, you can see religion, 26%. While we're still strong, that area of religion has declined dramatically from 1984 all the way up to today. We see a strong percentage staying around the same at our next bar down in human service, or sorry, in education, the same in human services. Foundations, again, they've increased around from 2003 to now. Health has stayed relatively the same. Public society benefit increasing, really 7%, 7%, and then jumping to 8% in that last 5-year period, and then trending up again in this period. Okay, total giving by type of recipient organizations in 5-year spans. These are the dollar amounts allocated to the same that we have just covered. And you see those bars kind of sharpening in the area of foundations, etc. But look at the number of 501c3 organizations from 2012 to 2022. We had a little over 1 million in 2012. Today we have almost, 1.48, almost 1.5 million nonprofit organizations in the United States. Strong, continues to grow. With a number of nonprofits, there is competition, obviously, more competition for dollars, but we're also seeing that generosity spread more across all of the recipient areas rather than going to one particular recipient area over time. And these are just some references, etc. So now I do want to answer some questions, but I thought I would, you don't need to keep all the references up. Yeah. Great. So many notes and so much that goes into this from Giving USA and from the Lilly School. And those references are important just to note in the PowerPoint, though we won't go over those today. What can be done really by fundraising professionals as a result of the results of the Giving USA report? I think with increasing costs to run nonprofits, it's safe to say that fundraising goals are going to go up, right? In the individual area, one of the things that we talked a lot about at the Giving Institute Summer Symposium this year was to focus on individual giving to help bring that up by focusing on donor retention rates. We all know that it costs a lot more to find a new donor than it does to keep an old one. So focusing on those donor retention rates, while it is more of an investment and at the long haul, it may be a while before you see very large gifts from those donors, but keeping those middle level donors close to you and even your newer donors close to you will help you over time. Middle level donors are important. We need to engage and maintain a positive relationship with this core group of donors, focusing on that next generation of philanthropists. As we see, the baby boomers now are moving into their planned giving era. The Gen Z following the baby boomers will receive the greatest transfer of wealth that the United States has ever seen. And so preparing for those philanthropists by preparing them and paying attention to them when they come in as first-time donors and then become middle-level donors to your organization, which means that resources in the fundraising shops, those that are resourced and focused in on advancing technology and their staff around middle giving, drives giving forward. We know that that drives individual giving forward, and that will help increase these numbers and bring people back to the table and giving, or making sure that they stay with us. Also offering planned giving opportunities, especially bequests for baby boomers, as we're seeing that sunsetting of the current estate tax exemption in 2025. Training your staff around listening for planned gifts is key, and also so they understand the basics of planned giving. Individual donor strategy does take time and money and will pay off in the long run. Remembering that all giving is personal, Review those engagement strategies to ensure your communication fosters appreciation and dialogue with your donors. Pulling back and going back to this conversation around relationships, instead of focusing that relationship management program only on the tip of the spear, looking at bringing down into the middle range giver and those that have given for the first time, maybe through other types of means, monthly giving, event giving, etc., and making sure that there's some activity towards stewarding them. On the foundation side, record-breaking assets in 2023 bode well for increased foundation giving in 2024 and 2025, remembering that foundations typically plan their giving in over rolling 3-year averages. So knowing that we're beginning to see that comeback, if you will, from those assets from foundations, we should see more giving in 2024 and 2025. Foundations are gearing up to address future implications of AI, and new funding opportunities will exist for organizations working with AI in any way, especially around foundation giving and foundation investment. And then finally, giving to foundations. As the boomer generation ages and makes plans for their estates, many may consider planned gifts to fund community, private and community foundation assets. This is a time to understand how DAFs work and how community foundations can benefit communities overall. Retirement plan designations and bequests are a priority for the baby boomers and those following them as they seek to consider what legacies they want to leave beyond their lifetime. And then addressing individual giving, which ties back sometimes into foundation giving driven by individuals. Later, I think in September, actually, in September the 17th, the Generosity Commission, which is an organization that was also funded by Giving USA, is going to be making its recommendations and coming out with the results of several years of research and study. And one of the things that they'll push forward in their commentary is the tie between volunteerism and the everyday giver. When people are able to volunteer, we remember that first they have to have an interest, next they need to be involved, and then finally they'll make an investment, right? So looking at ways that we can engage people with our nonprofits as volunteers, and then also from the corporate level, re-engaging employees of corporations and companies to engage in volunteering in their communities. Same with houses of worship. If you go all along the string of philanthropy, volunteerism is the key to investment. And so looking at how this has changed over the last 20 years is something the Generosity Commission has done with research also supported by Giving USA. And their focus will be on making recommendations to increase volunteerism, which should lead to increasing in individual giving and giving across the board. So I'm going to stop here. And Danny, if you want to throw some questions our way, be happy to try to answer those.
Absolutely. We've got a few to go through today. I'll start off with Chris Evans asked, do we know in the education sector how it's divided between higher ed, K through 12, and early childhood? Is that something that Giving USA looks into or keeps track of?
We can divide, I think, education from higher ed and education as a whole, but I'm not sure. Did he ask about preschool?
Yeah, like early childhood.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't think so. Brendan, do you know?
I'm with you, Missy. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't believe it gets that granular, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll move right on to the next one. Kathleen asked, is hospice care included in the health category?
It is. Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm in the dark again. Man, apologies everyone about that. And then Greta asked, are family foundations included in the foundation category?
For giving to foundations, yes. Mhm.
Okay.
And if they're independent operating foundations, they can be family foundations, right? And then they're also in the giving from.
Perfect. And then we did get a group of, or several different questions related to donor advised funds. If donor advised, but we'll start with, are they donor advised funds included in foundation data?
So no, they're not. So there's a separate, and Brendan, correct me if I'm wrong. Giving USA recently did a separate research study on donor advised funds. We have to remember that this
Yep.
information has been tracked over the last 60 years. And so to keep that constant, there's what is tracked has been tracked the same. So the research that was done by Giving USA on DAFs would give more information around specific DAF performance.
So where's
Yeah,
the
I would highly suggest if you're interested in seeing that true makeup of the DAFs in America, pull up that report. There's a lot of additional kind of freebie resources too that are on the Giving Institute and Giving USA websites that kind of break down DAFs even further. To speak more specifically to how they're included, I've got the frequently asked questions pulled up from the Giving USA report itself, and I'm reading word for word by dollar amount. The majority of DAF dollars are in the public society benefit category, but in that category, DAF dollars are still a minority to the sector. Now I know, that's just kind of at the surface level. That's where they kind of get lumped in. But that DAF report that they've done, I think a couple times now, Missy, that the Giving Institute has done and Giving USA has done, will really tell much broader story about how those dollars are being allocated across the U.S.
Yeah. And one of the recommendations that was made out of this year's study, and I think the same recommendation came out last year, maybe worded a little bit differently, and that is in our fundraising shops, as we start to think about this transfer of wealth and planned giving, that we ask our donors if they have a DAF, if they are involved with either a community foundation or they have a donor advised fund, and if so, where do they like to see their funds go? And what are the types of interests they have? So it's going back to just that individual relational conversation,
Mhm.
so much the vehicle. It's how do you like to give? What do you like to give to? And then how is it that you give, right? And focusing in on how people can do that.
right? Yeah. I think we got a little bit of a change of pace. A few questions related to how the GDP relates to all of, well, fundraising as a whole. How do those things interact?
Well, all we're sharing with what the purpose of the gross national product is to see what the industry avails, right? So 2% of gross national product is the nonprofit industry. It's not so much to say that drives fundraising. That would be more around the S&P, right? And disposable household income. Those are the areas that we look at. But when we're looking at gross national product, we're saying that the nonprofit industry makes up 2% of the gross national product, and giving to it is in that.
Do we know how the US sits as far as from a worldwide basis on the comparison? I know we said it was about 2% or around 2% for the US in comparison to our GDP. Is there?
No, I don't think I've seen a global, although this year we did have a global presentation for the first time, and we saw other countries really popping up in their philanthropy more so than they have before. We saw Africa, Brendan. We saw more giving in Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and of course in England and some of the European countries.
Do you know if Giving USA has looked at giving rates since tax law changes of 2017? This person shared that there was a $20 billion decline in giving in 2018, but do the trends show recovery from that?
And I'm going to try to follow along that string a little bit. We saw, if we go back, you could flip back to the slides on trends of giving over the last 50 years. So what they were sharing, the question said 2018, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So let's flip back. Can you go backwards on the slides to the trends in giving?
Yeah, let me.
I mean, it took I'll say in general, it took a long time to recover from 2009. We recovered and saw those really strong, that strong giving come back, 2018, 2019, we were about level. Then we saw the big increase in 2021. I'm not sure that I'm answering the question, but.
Go. I think I have that slide.
Okay, so ask the question again.
Sorry, a lot of windows at once.
We have a little bit of time, so I think it's okay.
Okay. Not finding it. All of a sudden, it looks like it disappeared.
Okay.
But from what I remember, there is some major tax law changes.
I've got it
Tax
here.
law changes,
Danny.
right?
Perfect, thank you.
Has Giving USA looked at giving rates since the tax law changes of 2017? There was a $20 billion decline in giving in 2018, but do the trends show recovery?
Yeah, I mean, we saw trends as far as recovery goes in inflation adjusted dollars in recession years, right? In 2020, 2021, and 2022. So I don't know if we can tie that directly to the tax laws, and I'm not sure if Giving USA has done that analysis.
Awesome. I think we covered it. If I'm seeing correctly,
Hopefully.
we're good on that one. If we have another question from Jeff. If someone has worked as a major or planned giving personnel for a guide dog organization, are there ways to track trends on potential donors to these types of organizations?
I'm not, if they're working there, that they can track trends. So we had animal, we showed giving has increased in the area of animal welfare. I'm
think-
assuming dog would fall into animal welfare.
Yeah, I think I think this person, and I'll take a guess, and Jeff, feel free to jump in the chat box if I'm not following. But I think they're asking if there's any breakdowns that you know of, even not with Giving USA, if there's anywhere else that we could follow any breakdowns of the animal care industry or animal care sector, on how those trends look.
Yes, but I don't know what reports those would be. And I say yes because I think in most every one of these areas, as I know with education and healthcare, they're able to break down further within their areas. But what I heard in the question was major gifts and planned gifts, right? Evolving into major gifts and planned gifts. And most of that has to do with intentional fundraising, with staffing, and with having a well-developed case for support and gift-giving opportunities. So I would say that as a whole over any industry, in order to receive planned and major gifts, those are the things that have to occur.
Awesome. And then I have another question. Arnold asked, how did the increase in international affairs giving play a role in giving as a whole? Do you know, can you share any of the factors that may have contributed?
I can look to see, go on to another question. I'll look and see if I can find it. Is there a breakdown?
Yeah, this is another one Arnold asked. What is meant by rolling averages in foundation giving?
So they're usually looking at how much interest income they anticipate having over time, and they're going to give away a percentage of that over time. So they're looking at how much money they receive over a 3-year period, what they anticipate to receive, and then giving away the required percentage. And I'm going to suggest for the individual that has a specific question around individual giving, that the Giving USA report is available to purchase, and a lot of data is in there. I haven't memorized all of that. To find that on this webinar period might be difficult. So I would suggest looking at getting a subscription, or if they can't do that, send me an individual chat and I'll be happy to research it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Missy. Let's see, we've got a lot of rolling questions as we keep going.
Awesome.
And some of these may be a little bit specific. So if anybody, we don't get to your questions or Missy's unable to answer them again, as Missy said, feel free to reach out. and we'll all try and help find answers to your questions.
There is so much data in here. I don't know how anyone can memorize any of it. But again, I'm gonna stay focused on, as fundraisers, what we should focus on to counter or to increase giving, and then the statistics that are here.
This is a good question. Joy asked, is there a way to quantify what is financial gifts versus in-kind gifts? Do we know if one is growing more than other, if there is a way to kind of quantify that?
So the Giving USA report does not look at in-kind giving, but organizations can absolutely quantify in-kind giving, right, over time. And what's important with in-kind giving, there's two kinds of quantification. One is it budget relieving, meaning that it's in the budget, it's something that the organization needs, and does it relieve the organization from having to go out and purchase an in-kind gift? So often when you look at your giving policies and your giving receiving policies, you're going to determine what kinds of in-kind gifts you're going to actually account, right? And then you account for them based on market value. And there are rules around that. There are rules through financial accounting standard practice and how you account for those, right? Versus financial, which is dollars, right? And that can be dollars in current dollars or dollars in terms of planned gifts or expectancies.
Awesome. Thanks so much for answering that one. That is the last question that I see on my list. So we have a few minutes left in case anybody wants to drop a last few questions into the chat or into the Q&A area. Before we go, I'm going to launch a poll where you can choose to request more information from the team at Gale. If you've loved what Missy had to share today, I'll make sure to get your information over to their team so that they can reach out. I just want to say a huge thank you again, Missy, for joining us today and for sharing all of this. I know there's, as you said, a lot of data included in these presentations. So thank you for taking the time to learn and go through it and share those takeaways for all of us. I know it's a lot to digest, so I appreciate a lot that you were willing to do that for all of us.
Well, thank you. And I think really as just a closing statement to remember that while we do see increases and decreases in giving, we remain a very resilient and giving country, and people have remained generous. So I hope to remember that and take that back to your donor population and thank them for what they're doing.
Great ending comments, Missy. Thank you again. I'll just echo Danny's statements. We appreciate the time and effort you put into this and kind of sharing with our audiences. And we hope it's a great takeaway for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We finished a little bit earlier, so hopefully you can use this extra time to get a kickstart on all of your fall fundraising activities. So please feel free to reach out to either QGive or MGale if you have any questions following today's webinar. A reminder, you will receive the recording and slides in your emails tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Bye.